Good morning. I'd like to open the April 25th session of the Science, Technology, and Energy Committee. And I'd like you all to rise and join Representative McGee as she leads us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Okay, thanks to you all for being here today. We have just one major item on our agenda today, and that is to resume the executive session on Senate Bill 271. But before we get to that, we have a couple of other issues to discuss briefly. First, I'd like to welcome back to the committee Representatives Kelly and LaFlamme, who are substituting today, as they did last week, for Representatives Vincent and Pimentel. So welcome, gentlemen. Nice to have you back. And secondly, I'd like to turn the microphone over to Representative Thomas to discuss activities in the month of May.
Yes, good morning. Apparently, we have a bunch of Tuesdays that are available in May where we don't have committee, but we have opportunities to do field trips to various places. So I would like to get, maybe not the second, but I would like to get your opinion and suggestions on where we might go. If we want to do all 4 Tuesdays, or if we can't do that, maybe we can do 2 of them. But if we have any suggestions, I'm willing to take them, and we can start planning and see and just see which ones the speaker will approve us to go. So that's one thing. Secondly, we're coming out of a long drought of camaraderie here, where we used to, at the end of the term, have a committee luncheon, taking our office assistant with us and our researchers. And so I'm open to suggestions on whether you would like to take advantage. I know we don't have any committee scheduled where you're going to be here anyway, but for those that might like to come back here to do a committee luncheon, I would take that suggestion. I think we should. I don't think Evangelina's is still open. We used to go there. It was a great place to eat, but is it open now?
Yeah, they reopened.
Oh, they reopened. Great. Well, perhaps we can do that again, or we can try some other endeavor. But I'm welcome to suggestions on whether you want to or not, and if so, when. Last week in May, maybe, or someplace just before session. I'm open.
So we want to hear your thoughts about a committee lunch. But before we get to that, I'd point out that we sent several bills this year to interim study. And we could form some subcommittees and begin work on the interim study activity in the month of May. And if we did some of that work on the same day as a luncheon was scheduled, then that would give everyone just cause to drive here to participate. So
And get paid.
and get paid. That's correct. So factor that into your discussions about whether we should get together for lunch or not. So let's hear your thoughts and your ideas. Representative Oxenham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there any further information on the Block Island trip?
Sadly, no. I have not been contacted since I was about over a month ago, or actually probably going on 5 weeks now. The tentative date was I think June 9th, I think, or what I think it was. I need to get back and find out if they're still planning to do it or not. So thanks for that reminder.
Further discussion, Representative Somcich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I had been talking to some people from the New Hampshire Electric Co-op, and as we probably all know, they have a huge solar array up in Moultonborough. And if that was something we might be interested in visiting, they're very open to that. So
Good suggestion. Thank you. Representative Partial?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Another subject, I think the idea of a lunch is absolutely splendid. I like the idea of a working session, and I'd like to put a bug out there for the idea of taking another look at the 5G bill that I think was going to be sent to interim session, study or to a work session.
Oh, absolutely. I have plans to start, have at least one subcommittee meeting between now and, I thought maybe the first part of June might have been good, but we'll look at as May. But I plan to have at least one, and maybe one or two in the fall.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So it's perfectly acceptable for you to make suggestions about interim study subcommittees at this point in time. Representative Lewicki?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One that we really were serious about was the one on the cell phone radiation, and I really would like to be on that one.
Yes, that's the 5G bill that we just discussed. Thank you for reminding us about that. Any other discussion? It would be nice to refrain from discussing it amongst yourselves and just discuss it with everybody here. Okay, all right. Representative Cambrils. Okay, so we're signing up for things. All right. So I don't have a strong sense here yet whether we're going to try to get together for lunch. So let's have a show of hands from existing committee members. Who would like to get together for an end of session lunch? All right, that's great. That looks pretty like a pretty positive response. So if we could combine a end of session lunch with a subcommittee work session on an interim study bill in the same day, that would be the ideal situation. Does any Tuesday in May work for folks? There's May 3rd, May 10th, May 17th, and May 24th. Does anyone have a preference about what day we might choose to engage in some of this activity? Representative Oxenham.
Unfortunately, I've got a series of medical appointments on Tuesdays because I figured those were days that would be available. So I know the coming Tuesday is a bad one for me. So if it could not be that Tuesday.
Okay, we can rule out May 3rd, so that leaves the 10th, the 17th, and the 24th. Anybody feel strongly one way or the other about any of those dates?
17th is not good for myself.
17th is bad? Okay, so
And the
now we're
10th
down to the 10th and the 24th.
The 10th is not good either. 24th looks best.
24th. Could we all set aside May 24th as the date of our end of session lunch? And hopefully we can put together a subcommittee to study one of the interim study bills on that day as well. So since we're on that subject, let's talk about interim study bills. Representative Callie Pitts.
Yeah, I can't. If we're going to have a luncheon, I think I know the first time I ever went to a committee lunch, I was surprised that it was on you. So I think that needs to be that it's on us when we go to lunch. Normally, we pay for it. That's the other one is that if we're going to have work sessions, why not open it to the whole committee if we're going to be doing it that day? So I would think that there are a number of topics that were of interest to most of the committee. And that anyone, usually when you open a work session, you have anyone who wants to come can come. And we should all be, I think, invited and interested and on the subcommittees. I know 5G was very interesting to me. And there are several others. So I think that might be the wisest thing to do.
Excellent points. So on your first point, any committee lunch would be Dutch treat. You pay for yourself. Actually, what we typically do is we add up the bill and then split it by the number of people who are there.
Yes.
Yes, we do
yeah,
pay for the committee researcher and the committee admin.
Yes.
An important point. You're right. So that's a good point. Thanks for bringing that up, Representative Kelly Pitts. As to your other point, I think interim studies need to be done by the full committee, not by a subcommittee. So I may have misspoken earlier when I said subcommittee. I meant the full committee would undertake those interim studies. Representative Partial?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Again, and I believe that the 5G was not actually meant to be an interim study, but a work group. Was that the intent of that?
Well, we voted to go to interim study.
Oh, it was, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, that's one.
Excuse me. There are
Representative
actually
McGee?
3 bills on interim study that for our consideration. If we HB 1248 relative to replacement power for net metering customer generators, and then 1635 relative to the purchase of output of limited electric energy producers and including qualifying storage, and the last one was the 5G bill. 1644.
Representative Somsich. Thank you, Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wouldn't be able to attend on the 24th of May because I'm going to be in Germany at the time. So, but that would not preclude, if that's the best date for everybody, that's fine with me.
Okay. Thank you. As Representative Plett said. Any further discussion? I do think that we should interim study 1248 and 1635 as well. And the 5G bill is probably going to take a long time, several hours, if not longer. So is there any feeling amongst committee members about which bill you would like to do on the 24th, the day we've picked for a session lunch? No strong feelings? Okay, I'll talk to Representative Thomas and we'll pick one and we'll let you guys know once we have a chance to do that. All right, so is there any further Representative Oxenham?
Please forgive me. I seem to have taken next Tuesday off the table very quickly for my own personal preference. I didn't realize that our noble leader would not be available at the end of the month. I can possibly, I think I can move my appointment on that day. So is the coming Tuesday available to people so that we could include Representative Somsich in our discussions?
Okay, let's have a show of hands. How many people would be available next Tuesday, which is May 3rd?
Lucius doesn't have his hand up. Bereshny doesn't have his hand up. Why didn't they do it the other?
Good question. If we're going to do next Tuesday, the 3rd, I have to post it today or tomorrow probably. So
it does take us right into session with the 2 following days. As I'm hearing around the room.
Yeah, 3 days.
yeah,
in a
we
row.
do have a session that week on the 5th.
That would be 3 days in a row.
Yeah, forgive me for bringing it up. Sorry.
Yeah. So with apologies to Representative Somsich, who obviously made travel plans some time ago, it looks like we may have to do the 24th instead.
I can't feel sorry if he's in Germany though.
But we wish you safe travels to Germany, and we'll look forward to hearing about your trip when you get back. All right. I think that takes care of our discussion of where we're going after this meeting is over today. And so I think we can move on to the business of the day. So I'd like to resume the executive session on Senate Bill 271. And I would like to move the adoption of amendment number 2022-1788H to Senate Bill 271, and I recognize Representative Thomas.
Second.
So it's been moved and seconded that we adopt Amendment 1788H. And I'm sure there'll be lots of discussion, and I'm going to start the discussion first by explaining what this amendment does. This is a fairly simple amendment. It's a substantial change from the original bill. As you will recall, the original bill proposed forgiving a $58 million, what will be a $58 million debt incurred by Burgess Biopower, a ratepayer debt, essentially. The original bill forgave that debt and allowed the plant to continue operation under its current model. What this amendment does is instead it extends the cap that was placed on overmarket payments by the 2018 Senate Bill 577 for another year. It further requires Burgess Biopower to open its books to the Department of Energy for an investigation into its future financial operation. This amendment does not solve the problem that Burgess Biopower faces, and I acknowledge that. But there did not seem to be on the immediate horizon a solid solution to that problem. Therefore, it seems prudent to me to spend more time investigating whether there can be a satisfactory, permanent solution to this problem. This bill will give us that time, another year. And I know there's a lot of discussion that's been going on amongst various stakeholder parties about what a future permanent solution may look like. I'm confident that such a solution will emerge in the next year. Therefore, I think it prudent to pass this amendment, provide the additional time that's needed to study this question, come up with a solution, and then resolve it permanently to the best ability, to the extent that we can. Will the solution we come up with be perfect? Probably not. Will it be politically controversial? Probably. But it's just because something is hard to do doesn't mean you should avoid trying to do it. I fully expect that a permanent solution to this problem will be hard to do. But we have to try. And we have to stop doing what this amendment does, kicking the can down the road. But the reason this amendment kicks the can down the road is because we need the time to come up with that permanent solution. So that's why I'm proposing this amendment. And now I'm anxious to hear your thoughts about it, Representative Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I know we're talking about the amendment, but I just wanted to mention a couple of things about the original bill because I think we deserve to bring that up. I don't think I've ever seen a bill that was this open-ended, where it turns around and says that the Public Utilities Commission shall amend any of its orders as necessary to protect the continued operation of the Burgess Bio Plant. I don't think New Hampshire's ever had a bill like that, where we told some private company, no matter what you do, no matter how badly managed you are, no matter how much you waste or don't waste money, we're going to just keep feeding revenues to you so you can't close. That's an open-ended, never-ending promise of unlimited funding. When I asked the main sponsor, he said, whatever it takes, whatever it costs. That's just bad legislation. Besides that fact, I don't think the bill is correct in that it tells the PUC what they have to do. My understanding is that a utility can bring a purchase power agreement to the PUC And the PUC can review that, and they can either approve it, disapprove it, or say we'll only approve it if you make the following change. But they don't have the authority to make a utility sign a purchase power agreement. The PUC can't dictate, in this case, to Eversource, you will supply unlimited amount of funds to Burgess Biomass. Whatever they say they need, you'll give them. So I don't think that that's even legal. And the third thing I want to mention here is if you look across the scope of New England, almost every power plant over the last 20 or 25 years, as we've gone from a regulated to a less regulated market, has been bought and sold, most of them many times, up to and including the biggest one in the state, which is the two nuclear, in New Hampshire, the nuclear plant, Seabrook, and also the nuclear plant down in Millstone. I mentioned the Londonderry plant down in, which was a gas-fired plant, which at one point I think the original owners just walked away and said to the bank, it's yours. And I think it's been sold a couple more times since then, but now it's operating and it's running at a profit. At least it's not getting a subsidy from the ratepayers, I can tell you that. And that they continue to operate. So the point I'm trying to make here is just because the present ownership of Burgess Biomass goes away, doesn't mean the plant goes away. They can go in, this is one of the things that this year will give them, is a year to negotiate with anybody out there. And maybe they'll have to sell it for, quote, pennies on the dollar, like was done in the Londonderry plant. But just because this ownership group leaves doesn't mean the plant's going to be shut down. And in fact, there's probably a price out there somewhere, if you drop it down enough, where the plant is viable. I don't know where that is. I'm not an expert at how much it costs to run a wood-burning plant. But I know that we've also been told by some of the other wood-burning plants for the last, I don't know, 10, 15 years, that they're going to close if they don't get additional subsidies on top of the RPS, and yet one plant is still open. So there must be a way to do it if you can work your numbers right. So I just think that we have to look at some option. And as the chairman said, this gives a year, but the big thing is it opens up the books. We don't know exactly what it is. The original bill, I would assume, whatever's necessary to protect the continued operation. Burgess would just send Eversource a bill every month and say, here's how much extra money I need to keep running. This allows the Department of Energy to go through the books and see exactly what their costs are, their revenues, and come up with an honest assessment of what's going on at that plant, which we haven't been able to do up until now. Does it kick the can down the road a little bit? Yeah. But in the year, we're going to be able to pick up the can and read what it says on the label, because we're going to know the finances of the Burgess Biomass plant and what it's going to take to make that a viable entity that'll stay going forward without huge ratepayer subsidies. And just don't forget about one other thing. Remember, this plant, because of the contract with the PPA, they got $27 million in RPS payments for RECs. That's more than anybody else gets. That's $27 million bonus for being green. And yet they say that's not good enough. Even with $27 million bonus, they still can't run. So I think we really need to look at the ownership structure there, and it's time to start thinking about possibly selling the plant, because it just isn't going to work under the way it is right now. And I strongly recommend we approve this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Callie Pitts.
Let me preface my remarks by saying I want the plant to stay open, but there are two things that I'm not sure about. One, I thought that the problem was the 58 million that's already been collected, and that was the wedge, and that's what we were looking to forgive. So this bill, or that's what they were looking to get forgiven. This bill does not do that as far as I can see. And I'll bring up the second problem, or the second question I have, is that if the PUC is quasi-judiciary, how can the legislature dictate to them what they shall do? And I don't know if there's other wording or other ways about it, but I was not quite in sync with that particular paragraph. So if those questions could be answered, I'd really be happy.
Thank you, Representative Callie Pitts. To your first question, you're right. This bill does not forgive the $58 million, as the original bill that came over from the Senate did. And the reason it doesn't do that is because those are ratepayer dollars. And it doesn't seem prudent to just give away 58 million of ratepayer dollars. To answer your second question, the PUC is a regulatory agency, ultimately, as is the Department of Energy, or many of the functions of the Department of Energy. And legislative activity is the guide they use to make their regulatory decisions. So the legislature can tell the PUC and the DOE what to do in broad strokes. And it's perfectly legitimate, I think, for this amendment and this legislature to say, we think this is the best course of action going forward. Representative Platt has a comment. Just a clarification from Representative
I wanted to
Gallifitz.
follow up. My understanding from the hearings that we had was that the 58 million that we were talking about has already been collected, so it would not be an additional subsidy. Am I correct in that assumption?
I believe that is correct, yes. Representative Platt.
Yes, I endorse all of the comments made by my colleague, Representative Harrington, with one minor exception. When he said next year maybe we can come out with something that doesn't have huge ratepayer subsidies, I would amend that to say without any ratepayer subsidies.
Okay, thank you. Further comment, Representative Mann.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It seems to me that the proper scope of this problem is much bigger than the Burgess plant. That it's really about the economy of that area up there. And it's almost like we're being held hostage by the fact that we can't just throw away all kinds of jobs. So I think as a parallel effort, it might be useful to set up a commission to study that economy and come up with possible ideas, either to just turn it back into wilderness or find another way for that part of the world that part of our state to be economically viable. There was a plan once about, and I don't know much about it, but I know there was talk about a plan to have a large greenhouse producing fresh vegetables year round up there, and there would be a major economic support, I would think. So I think in addition to what we're doing here, I think we should be recommending a much larger scope investigation. Thank you.
I would agree with you that a permanent solution is not just a solution for this one particular biomass plant, but is actually a solution for the forest products industry. That's the most important and statewide interest that we can serve here, is to take care of the forest products industry. Further comment, Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a couple of comments on comments that have already been said. I noticed that we're discussing how the Department of Energy is now also a regulatory body in addition to the Public Utilities Commission. And I did think that in our discussion of HB2 and when the Department of Energy came into being, we had several discussions about the bright red line between regulatory and executive or administrative functions of that agency. And my concern was that the lines be blurred, and it seems that that's what's happening now, is that we're saying, well, if we want some regulatory decisions, we can just put it into this agency of the executive branch. So I have a concern about that. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that it's discouraging to me that when we talk about these very sophisticated power purchase agreements that were put through an in-depth process where the stakeholders had agreement, that we as a committee, because we weren't personally at the table or we don't understand the details, are saying we need to know more. I actually don't think that the financials of the Burgess biomass plant are opaque. I think it's just that we personally have not seen those. And so my question would be, this bill is vague, and what it does is it doesn't just kick the can down the road. It continues the problem that we've had already. The reason Eversource ratepayers are on the line for this money is because of the power purchase agreement. The money was collected because that was agreed. What we were being asked to do with SB 271, I believe, is to say that the plant itself was not on the line for coming up with all of that money, that it was going to be a wash that we were going to allow in order to let them go forward. And they offered to put language in the bill that said there would be no further subsidies from the ratepayers. So the thing that folks on the panel are saying they desire was offered by the plant. We didn't take that solution. And now we're saying, without any details or directives about what would be suitable in terms of what we're going to find in the books, we don't have any details about what hurdle the plant is required to meet in order to continue. So I have a lot. I'm a co-sponsor on this because I want to see us resolve it, but I also have questions about what it is we're actually trying to achieve with this amendment, because we didn't give the solution that we were asked to provide, and we also haven't given any definition to which solution would be acceptable. I guess that's where I would leave it. Right? We're saying there's something out there we don't know, and we are not giving any direction on, and we're leaving everything up in the air, which I think is a weak position for us and for the state.
Okay, thank you. I would respond to that by pointing out that the language offered by the company, there was grave concern amongst several parties who looked at that language about whether it was achievable. And one of the things that this 1-year extension will do is allow people time to determine whether that in fact is achievable. And if it is, then maybe it'll go forward at a future date, but not today. Representative Harrington.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's just in the way of a little background as to a little bit of history on this. In the past, we had a thing called QFs, which were qualified facilities. And this has come out of the federal government some years ago. And basically, it was determined that renewable generators like the small hydros and small wood burning plants could be paid what we expected the market rate to be in the future. So while prices for electricity were 4 and 5 cents a kilowatt hour, they were getting paid 15 and 16 cents a kilowatt hour. That all added up to around $2 billion in over market rates that were paid to these qualifying facilities. So the whole reason for the cap in this one was when it was negotiated for the PPA, it was decided, wait a minute, everyone look into the future, it's going to be difficult to determine. No one knows what the energy price is going to be a year from now. If you figure it out, let me know, because then we can both be rich. But so that was put in as a safety valve for the ratepayers. So if when things went along, and as it turned out, after this agreement was signed, wholesale energy prices actually went down for a number of years. Now they're trending back up. But it was to maximize the amount that the ratepayers would have to pay. And once it got to a certain amount, the biomass plant was supposed to start paying them back. All terms of which they agreed with. And now they want to change that. Now, you mentioned they sat here and said that there's no additional cost, but you know what? That's not in the bill anywhere. What is in the bill is the public utility shall amend its orders as necessary to protect the continued operation, regardless, if you heard Senator Bradley, regardless of what it takes, regardless of the cost. So the fact that they say we might not be asking for any more money does not give me a warm feeling. This bill would allow them unlimited funding the way it was proposed. And I think what we have here is a compromise that gives us a year to look at it. We open up their books. We have a better idea of what's going on with really what their costs are and expenses are. And it also gives them that time to look into the possibility of selling the plant. Because like I said, I don't think there is maybe there's one or two out there, but I think the overwhelming majority of plants, generating plants in New England, have been sold at least once since we started restructuring in the late 1990s.
Representative Somsich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say that I have a lot of respect for Senator Bradley. And I think that as office holders, elected office holders, I personally believe that one of my primary obligation is to ensure that I don't destroy anybody's jobs in New Hampshire. That's their livelihood. And therefore, I'm willing to do a lot of things to make sure that that doesn't happen. And yes, I agree with Representative Harrington about a need for oversight, that this is not an open-ended checkbook that they can charge whatever they want and have all kinds. We could do something to restrict that. And I also agree with Representative Vos on the idea that this is not a permanent solution. This is just gives us some extra time. However, when I look at the amendment too, I noticed that the amendment clearly undervalues the value of this facility. Previously, where the original wording was something like essential or invaluable, now it's just valuable and maybe needed and so forth. And, you know, the fact that this is a renewable energy plant, the only one of that kind of magnitude in our state, and that it provides all kinds of ancillary benefits to health and well-being of everybody, including the timber industry, but also the rest of the state. I think that's a reason in an election year particularly not to do anything destructive in this situation. Yes, we need a permanent solution, and we should work on that. And I agree also that support, or whatever we want to call it, should not be coming just from ratepayers. It could be coming from a more broader base of New Hampshire residents. That is a good idea. We don't have time now to resolve this today. So I am not going to be voting for this amendment. I support the original bill as is, and I believe that we can do things that we could make sure we can put some kind of guardrails in place for next year to, if we decide this goes ahead for the time being as is, then we should have the opportunity to modify it if we feel that there is a better solution long-term to it. Like I said, I'm not going to vote for this as is, and but I understand the hard work that was put in, and I understand the fact that this one-year extension is better than nothing. Now, I'm a scientist, but I have an MBA in business as well, and I know that if a one-year extension is not very valuable for a business, they can't plan for a year, they can't plan for the future. What they can plan for is how they're going to sell it or get out of the business and close shop within a year. So I think this is actually a bill that really is sending a message. We don't support this plant right now. There's no guarantee we will support it in the future. Obviously, in an election year, we like to pretend to support things, but I have no confidence that this is a good bill with the amendment. I would much sooner see the original bill go through, and maybe we can modify those terms in the future, or we can put some kind of guardrails in place. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Murner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When we passed 577 3.5 years ago, the year after we passed this, the wholesale electric rates went crashing. I have small hydros up there that friends of mine and partners own. I mean, 2.5 cents on the open market. I know we went through a time, obviously, that was uncertain. So, you know, this didn't play out the way we wanted it to play out back when we passed the bill, which I endorsed back in whatever year it was, 3.5 years ago, 2018. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, you know, there's a lot of factors that played into this. So I think it's really, really important that we look at this for the next year. Now that the market has totally changed in the last 6 months, everything's totally changed. It's been turned on its head. I mean, we had an average daily price of $135 a megawatt in the month of January, when the year before it was $30. So, you know, things have changed. And to the point on the low-grade wood, thanks to our vice chair and myself, and I think Janine's on the bill, we have a low-grade wood commission that has just passed. It went through Rec and Resources, and it just passed the Senate. So we're going to have a low-grade wood commission that we can look at. We're looking, there's a big plant that was proposed up north for a gasification of low-grade wood. That's kind of on the fence right now. There's 2 sites. And to the point of Mr. Mann, we have 2 10-acre buildings in Berlin, but it has nothing to do with this power. They're going to run on gas. We actually passed a bill in our committee back in 18 for the gas for an exclusion on the gas for those plants, for those two big operations. If it comes to fruition, it's supposedly going forward right now. So, it's going to be hydroponics plants. They're 2 10-acre buildings. They're huge. They're just down the road from this plant, but it's going to run on natural gas because we have a gas line that runs across Coas County, and they're going to tap that.
Thank you, Representative Murder. Representative Partial.
Thank you, Chair. First, I loved hearing you talk about the how we need a broad solution for our forestry industry. I think until we solve that, we're going to continue to have problems like this. I also agree with Representative Somsich, and that I've seen a 2-year audit would serve us much better than a 1-year. It's hard to make decisions, and we're not even talking about a full year. It's hard to make decisions, business decisions, in such a limited amount of time. So that's one of my other concerns. And my other concern, I'm sure you could address this one, is this bill seems like it had a lot of input from a variety of sources. The Department of Energy has certainly weighed in and said they're fully prepared to take on the audit of this company. They are fully, okay, that was my main concern. I don't know if I'm going to go along with the amendment. I'm certainly going to want to vote positively either for the bill or the amendment and see this through. Thank you.
Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to hop on to what Representative Murner said. My bill, HB 1005, has established a commission to study the forest industry and wood products to how we can better support the forest industry with other things other than just ratepayers. And I believe that with that knowledge, this amendment extending the bill a year will give us time for the commission to come together and give them time to come up with alternative actions that will help the forest industry. This commission is greatly supported by the forest industry, of course, and the Forest Service and the governor, and it's something that we need to look at. And so I see this amendment as time spent to allow the plant to operate while this commission does its work and while the DOE does its work for the books. So with that knowledge and this commission being established, which I intend to be on, I support this amendment as a kind of a stopgap measure until we find out what the true solution could be.
Thank you, Representative Callie Pitts.
This being a baseload plant, which hasn't been mentioned yet, is very important. I'd like a clarification, if possible, that this bill will not encourage or will not cause any additional charge to the ratepayers, that the status quo with this amendment is going to remain. In other words, the money that's being collected now will continue to be collected. Is that a correct assumption, that this is not going to raise the rates in any way at this time due to this amendment?
The answer to that question is a little bit up in the air. None of the 3 orders, apparently, that are mentioned in the amendment addresses cost recovery. I just learned that this morning. And so there is the possibility that cost recovery will be something we will have to concern ourselves with in the inevitable committee of conference that this bill, this amendment, if we pass it, will generate with the Senate. So while I don't want to ignore that idea, I don't think we can fix it here this morning, but there is a way to fix it before the bill gets to the governor's desk. You're welcome. Representative Oxenham.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In your earlier remarks, you spoke about a study that would look at the forest products industry more broadly as being something that was in your amendment. We've now heard about a bill that's passed elsewhere, which apparently will provide such a study. What we have in this amendment is an audit by the DOE looking at the books of this particular plant. So it's a very big disconnect between when you gave us an overview of the amendment, you talked about this not being about just one bill, but being about the forest products industry more broadly. So having now heard about this other bill, it seems to me it would be useful for your intention in bringing this amendment to still be included here, that this audit and report by the Department of Energy, which is going to be very narrowly focused, is not the intention of this body. The intention is to support a much broader study.
Thank you. I think you might have misinterpreted my earlier comments slightly. What I was talking about when I introduced or did the overview for this amendment was the fact that the additional year that this bill provides, or this amendment provides, would allow not only for a Department of Energy investigation and audit, but would also allow for discussions that I know are happening because I've participated in them about possible long-term solutions to this issue, to this problem. I didn't say that this amendment provided for such a study. And I think you misinterpreted my comments to say that. Follow up.
I did try to take down your remarks because I understood them to be important. And you said that you were looking for a permanent solution as the ultimate goal, and that was not just for this one plant, but actually a solution for the forest products industry. So I'm just asking if there's a way, and maybe it's at the committee of conference, to incorporate that notion that, like the way you handled the SEC we had a bill that was a short-term solution, temporary, and we had one that looked to the future so that there would be a much better and hopefully permanent solution forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that suggestion. Representative Somsich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last question. I had conversations with some of the stakeholders, and I was told that this plant is already providing almost all the financial information that is requested in this amendment. Is that correct? And what's missing? And because it doesn't seem like there's that much missing at this point.
Much of the language of this amendment came from the Department of Energy. This is something that the Department of Energy feels is necessary to gather information sufficient to make future long-term decisions about how to proceed in solving this problem. Follow up?
Are you aware of any other facility that the Department of Energy is going to look into their books and see how they're being operated?
I'm not aware of any, no. Further comments, Representative Lewicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It would seem that getting the audit done would give us some information which we may or may not already have, because the plant's going to be paying so much a ton for wood chips. They're going to have so much in operating costs, personnel and so forth. And that's going to give us a number that should say this is what we can afford to run on per kilowatt hour, per megawatt hour. It just it seems like fairly simple arithmetic if we've got the data to work with.
Thank you. Additional comments? Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think that goes back to my original concern around what is it we're trying to get at, because we can get the math, right? We can have that, which we may not have now, which is a good thing. But the whole first paragraph here that we've taken the adjectives and watered them down a bit to make the plant not quite as essential in terms of the language. The question still becomes, regardless of what that math ends up being, how much value is given to the other pieces of what the plant provides to the New Hampshire economy are we taking into consideration? If we have no metrics and we have no criteria for how that's being weighed, then how do we know what we're marching towards in terms of having an audit? Because an audit is simply, the pluses and the minuses, but not the value. I know it's a complicated question, but that's really what is before us.
Representative Platt.
There are more than one plant in New Hampshire, and each one of them could argue about value. I don't see any such argument leading to ratepayer subsidies long-term, period.
I think also the answer to your question would be we have a renewable portfolio standard, and that standard seeks to answer the question, how do we value these resources? Any further discussion? Representative Somsich.
Well, I couldn't resist, thank you, Mr. Chairman, couldn't resist responding to Representative Platt. It is true that these other plants are not getting a subsidy. In fact, they should be having it be surcharged for the harm they do to our environment and the dependency we have to them from outside fuel sources. No, they shouldn't be given the subsidy.
Representative Oxenham, did you have another comment?
Yes, thank you very much. I wanted to call everyone's attention to the map that was presented to us at the public hearing that showed that the issue here is not simply this plant, but it's the sourcing of wood products from across the state. That the issue of the value of this plant, what it pays in taxes to the city of Berlin, what it provides in terms of jobs, what it provides in terms of people who sell timbering equipment and pickup trucks to people who actually perform these jobs. The value of this goes way, way beyond the issue of the single plant. And I'm very, very pleased that we are going to have the commission that came out of Representative Thomas's bill. That's a great thing to have out there, but it's not solving this problem. And 1 year doesn't even successfully kick this down the road. There was a timeline in one of the attachments that came out yesterday that said by the time the PUC looks at this and gets back, the year will be practically used up. And it's not like the DOE isn't doing a lot of other things at the same time. So I feel like if we were to suspend this session and have an opportunity, perhaps a small group could work up an alternative amendment that could take us forward to some consensus. But the amendment that we have before us is not one that speaks to the really important, dare I say, vital role that's played by this industry, which it has ramifications across the economy. And I know questions were raised at the public hearing, which talked about tourism, cross-country skiing, hiking. This has the ripples go throughout the economy, and I think we need to be giving this issue the significant attention it deserves, and not rushing ahead with an amendment that purported to be a study, but it's just an audit, and I can't see supporting it as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. You are absolutely right. All the things you talked about are why this issue is so complicated and why it's so hard to come up with a permanent solution. And we're not going to come up with that solution today, or even in this session year of this legislature, I don't believe. And that's why I believe we need another year to really put our noses to the grindstone to come up with a workable solution. And I think we've been going about it the wrong way. Subsidizing biomass plants is not the best way to support the forest products industry. Maybe what we should be focusing our attention on is the forest products industry. And just to throw out a couple of ideas, and I'm not saying that these are a solution, but to throw out a couple of ideas, the state could buy low-grade timber and then sell it back to the biomass plants at a steep discount. The state could potentially do that. It would require taxpayer money, but it could happen. There are ways to solve this problem, but we need time to come up with a permanent solution. And I think we have to go forward today by amending this bill so that we'll have time to do that. Representative Callie Pitts.
Just a quick question. I'm going to support the amendment, but who's going to be working on this? Is partially ST&E going to be working on it? Department of Revenue, who's going to be working on these solutions? Because they really have to be worked on. And so I just would like you perhaps to give some thought where this committee would fit in, since we are so concerned with these issues and have been for many years.
I think the overall guidance will come from the commission that's established by the bill that Representative Thomas submitted. That commission will give a lot of guidance to the effort to how we solve the problem of how we support the forest products industry. And by so supporting that industry, we can probably find ways to help other industries in the process. Representative Partial?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Looking over the study committee, it looks like a fantastic committee. I noticed the sunset date on that is December of 2023 in order to have your work completed, which is a year after this audit, which may or may not make sense. I can understand that. My question is, you foresee a situation, does the drafters of this amendment foresee a situation where we'll be coming back next year to authorize yet another stopgap method bill in order to carry us over to 2023 when we can get some final solutions worked out?
I really can't speculate on what could happen a year from now. I see this bill and this amendment addressing the Burgess power plant issue directly and the forest industry indirectly. And I see that my bill on the commission addresses the overall state forest issue and products in a way that we may either get away from, depending on power plants for the forest industry, or to use them in conjunction with the health of the forest and other forest products that could be developed. So I really don't know what could happen a year from now. I would look at it very critically if they wanted to extend it past next year, unless we come up with some permanent solution.
I will say that I personally, should I be fortunate enough to get reelected to this legislature, will undertake a major effort to come up with a permanent solution to this problem with legislation next year. That is a personal commitment that I will make today to all of you and to the public, that I will work diligently in conjunction with the Forest Products Commission and in conjunction with any stakeholder who has an interest in this subject. We will find a solution. It may not be a perfect solution, and as I said earlier, it may not be easy to get something passed, because there will be people who will object to anything you come up with, right? And that's how you refine ideas and how you improve ideas. That effort will happen, because I'm pledging you to you all today that I will work to make it happen. Representative Somsich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In light of your commitment here today, and also in light of the discussion we just had about various options, I'm just picking up the suggestion that Representative Partial made before. How would you feel about this amendment being amended to go from 1 year to 2 years, which would seem like a more reasonable time to get stuff like this done? It's pretty complicated.
My reaction to that is that 2 years is too long. If we're going to get this done, we need a deadline. I was in business for 40 years, and I watched projects that never got done because they didn't have a deadline. You got to have a deadline to make something happen. This amendment establishes a really aggressive deadline, and that'll ensure that we get something done. Representative McGee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Back to the deadline. I'm project manager here. Agree with you about the deadlines. But is it the right deadline? I think I heard Representative Thomas say that he would not be interested in an extension if we get to the end of 1 year, which would be May of next year, and we don't have a final solution, to quote you, a final solution. If there are dependencies in terms of what's going through with HB 1005, then perhaps it would make sense to go 18 months to November so that we actually are in a position where we have the outcomes of the decisions that are being made from that study committee, which is intertwined with the potential solution.
Representative McGee, you raise a good point of clarification that I neglected to elucidate earlier. This extension does last until November of 2023. It doesn't end in May because the current order that it extends ends in November of 2022. So by extending it by a year, it takes it out to November of 2023.
Okay.
I'm sorry I didn't clarify that earlier. Representative Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry. I try to choose my words carefully, and just for the record, I said that I would look at any extension very critically. I did not say that I would not be interested. I would look at it very critically. So just would like to have it clarified.
Representative Bernardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Although the broader issue is the forest products industry generally, I think the immediate issue with this bill is the economic viability of this plant. Can it be continue to be operated just using the RPS subsidies it gets, or is it viable on its own, like the smaller biomass plant that operates up there is, or does it? And can it be ever in a place where it will repay that $58 million debt? And we need to understand those economics. I think this bill puts us in a position to get that information through the audit so we can make a decision. Should we go forward and continue to support this kind of operation, or does it need some other additional assistance, and are we willing to grant that or not? That's what's on the table. I support this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Lewicki.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One observation is that this plant does try to operate pretty much continuously, except for a 2-week shutdown. And the other plants have the option of running when they choose. And so they can choose their timing, and they can run when the price of electricity is higher. And so it's apples and oranges economically.
This plant can do the same. Representative Oxenham.
One point, I thank you very much for clearing up the November 23 deadline. That was very helpful. I asked that perhaps you reconsider your commitment to put in a bill in September of 22 and hold off and allow that to be a commitment for the LSR window, which would be November of 23 and would align much more closely with the we don't get a November window when we in a non-election year, do we? So at least September of 23 for that window.
Okay, further comments? Seeing none, I think it's time to call for a vote. So I ask the clerk to call for a vote on the question of the adoption of the amendment 2022-1788H to Senate Bill 271. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Thomas,
Yes.
Representative Harrington,
Yes.
Representative Notter,
Yes.
Representative Murner,
Yes.
Representative Platt votes yes. Representative Berejny,
Yes.
Representative Bernardi,
Yes.
Representative Cambrils,
Yes.
Representative Ploget,
Yes.
Representative White,
Yes.
Representative Somsich,
No.
Representative Callie Pitts,
Yes.
Representative Mann,
Yes.
Representative Oxenham, Representative Lewicki.
Yes.
And I apologize for calling you so late, Representative Lewicki, but that's the way this is laid out. So, Representative Kelly,
No.
Representative McGee,
Yes.
Representative McWilliams,
No.
Representative Creechin,
No.
Representative Laflamme,
No.
Representative Lucius. Not partial. Not partial, sorry.
I like both names. that's
Sorry,
okay, yeah.
Representative Partial. I'm partial to your last name.
Yes.
Okay. And the chair.
Yes.
The vote is 16-6.
By a vote of 16-6, the committee amendment 1788H is adopted. I now move the adoption of Senate Bill 271 as amended and recognize Representative Thomas.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we adopt Senate Bill 271 as amended by Amendment 2022-1788H. Do we need any further discussion? Seeing none, I ask the clerk to call the roll on the question of the passage of Senate Bill 271 as amended. Mr. Clerk.
Just 1 second, and I shall do so. Okay, catching up. I have to label all of these.
While the clerk is doing his administrative duties, I would remind everyone that if you so desire, you can join members of the committee who will be touring the control room of the Eversource utility this afternoon, starting at 12:30 at their facility in Manchester. I understand they're going to provide us with some lunch before the tour, and I would urge you all to attend. If you plan to attend and you haven't notified us already, let Ms. Gamache know before she leaves here today that you will be in attendance.
Okay, starting with the roll call, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Representative Thomas.
Yes.
Representative Harrington.
Yes.
Representative Nodder.
Yes.
Representative Murner.
Yes.
Representative Plett votes yes. Representative Berejny.
Yes.
Representative Bernardi.
Yes.
Representative Cambrils.
Yes.
Representative Ploget.
Yes.
Representative White.
Yes.
Representative Sumsich.
No.
Representative Calais Pitts. Representative Mann.
Yes.
Representative Oxenham.
No.
Representative Lewicki.
Yes.
Representative Kelly.
Yes.
Representative McGee.
Yes.
Representative McWilliams.
Yes.
Representative Creechin. Representative Laflamme.
Yes.
Representative Partial.
Yes.
And the chair.
Yes.
The vote is 20-2.
By a vote of 22, Senate Bill 271 is adopted as amended by 2022-1788H. Will there be a minority report? Representative Somsich will write the minority report. And I thank you all. That was a spirited and informative debate. I think we aired the issue thoroughly, and I appreciate your hard work.
Representative Sumsich, what would your alternative motion be if you're writing the minority report for? Yes. Okay.
Okay, all right. Let's call this quits for today. That's the end of the exec session for Senate Bill 271. Once again, I thank you. I look forward to seeing many of you at the Eversource control room tour. If you do not join us there, then we will be gathering on May 24th for lunch and some full committee work sessions. Until then, I thank you all and good morning.